What about our taxation system? So complex. There is no one who can possibly comply with every jot and tittle of our tax and say. What we need to do is come up with something that's simple. And when I pick up my Bible, you know what I see? I see the fairest individual in the universe, God, and he's given us a system. It's called tithe. Now, we don't necessarily have to do it 10%, but it's principle. He didn't say, if your crops fail, don't give me any tithes. He didn't say, if you have a bumper crop, give me triple tithes. So there must be something inherently fair about proportionality.
All right, finally, after months, if not years, of hearing President Obama lecture the so-called rich about paying their fair shares, well, somebody finally had the courage to stand up and issue a rebuttal to the president and his divisive class warfare rhetoric. Now, it came when Dr. Benjamin Carson issued a forceful challenge to the president's liberal approach to last week's National Prayer Breakfast. But unlike so many politicians in Washington, the doctor's comments were much more than meaningless bluster. He actually backed him up with facts and policy proposals, including a flat tax. Joining me now to talk about his approach to saving America's failing economy, my guest for the hour, please, everybody, welcome back, Dr. Benjamin Carson. But I'm just curious, I don't know if anyone's even asked you this question yet. What was the president's reaction personally to your speech? Did you talk to him?
I talked to him afterwards, and he came over. He was very gracious, said, you know, thank you for your speech. He didn't say he enjoyed it, but he did say, and he said he admired me.
I suspect you might have known that going in. Let me play, you said something in talking about the economy that really hit home with me. Okay. And that's about the deficit. $16.5 trillion we have.
That is a number that is so mind-boggling, and that's why I said if you counted one number per second, it would take you 507,000 years, more than 500,000 years. It's a number that's just staggering, and it's continuing to grow. And you know, we sit around and we talk about, well, maybe we can keep it from growing further. We need to reduce it, and the way to reduce it, obviously, is to get the economy growing again. You know, it doesn't really do any good to keep taking from this tree or that tree and squeezing it down. You know, I like parables, so in the book America the Beautiful, I give a parable of two brothers, identical brothers, and they're put on deserted islands with their families. And one had the philosophy, they only ate trees and products of trees. One had the philosophy, I'm going to eat what I need, and I'm going to let the others grow. Pretty soon, he had an entire forest. He had enough food forever. The other one, as soon as a sapling came up, he was on it and eating it. And he and his family eventually starved to death. It's basically the same kind of thing if you keep taking and taking, rather than creating a situation where you can grow. And you look at the fact that we have the highest corporate taxes in the world, and then we wonder why companies are going offshore. Well, we need to go back to basic business school and understand that companies are there to earn money, not to be social welfare organisms.
Mm-hmm. And let me play for you a history. This is President Obama has said many, many times that he's going to fix the debt and the deficit, and he spoke earlier this week at the State of the Union. Let's go down memory lane here.
Now, what I've done throughout this campaign is to propose a net spending cut. And I want to go through the federal budget line by line, page by page. Programs that don't work, we should cut.
Today, I'm pledging to cut the deficit we inherited by half by the end of my first term in office. I will use the money we're no longer spending on war to pay down our debt. My plan would cut our deficit by $4 trillion.
But what my opponent didn't tell you was that federal spending, since I took office, has risen at the slowest pace of any president in almost 60 years.
$6 trillion in new debt since he became president. I'm not asking you a political question. Right. To me, this is more of a moral issue.
It is.
You can't steal from your kids and grandkids.
And the people years before World War II, it's really when it started deteriorating, always felt that we needed to pay our debts down. And again, you'll see lots of quotes in the book about what our founding fathers and some of our predecessors thought about sending debt to the next generation, that in fact it was immoral. We've just completely forgotten about that now.
Yeah, I think that is a defining issue of our time.
It is. And you know, the other thing is we need to create a situation that has everybody involved. Everybody has to have skin in the game in order to make this work. We talk about an egalitarian society. Well, if everybody is paying according to their ability, which is what the tithing system was, it's proportional. If you make $1 gazillion, you pay a lot of tax. If you make very little, you pay very little tax. But your skin is in the game. Now, the reason that our government, as it stands now, doesn't like that is because if everybody has skin in the game, it makes it a whole lot harder for you to raise taxes. And now you got to be accountable to everybody, and you can't just make 1% or 2% or 5%. Man.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back, and when we come back, Dr. Carson will share with us his prescription for curing America's failing healthcare system. And then Ben Carson for president? Well, that was the headline of a recent Wall Street Journal editorial. So are politics in the doctor's future? We'll ask him. And Frank Luntz and his focus group dial the doctor's prayer breakfast speech as Saving America continues. We're glad you're with us.
Here's my solution. When the person is born, give them a birth certificate, an electronic medical record, and a health savings account, to which money can be contributed pre-tax from the time you're born to the time you die. When you die, you can pass it on to your family members so that when you're 85 years old and you got 6 diseases, you're not trying to spend up everything. You're happy to pass it on, and there's nobody talking about death panels.
And welcome back to the special studio audience edition of Hannity. We're calling it Saving America. Joining me tonight for the hour is Dr. Benjamin Carson. Now, ever since his remarks at the National Prayer Breakfast, he has quickly become one of the leading voices against government-run health care. But again, unlike so many of our elected representatives in Washington, he isn't simply just complaining. He's offering real, reasonable answers to help fix the problem. And we welcome back Dr. Carson. And again, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
You gave a speech, a commencement speech in 2007, and you used a great analogy about if you give people their own accounts, and you used food stamps as an analogy.
Right.
And you said people don't buy a porterhouse on day one.
Right, exactly, because you know, there are some government programs that do work, and food stamps do save people's lives. I think probably it's been abused a little bit and gone beyond that point now, but it serves as a good model because when people get their monthly allocation, they don't go out and buy porterhouse steak the first 5 days and starve the rest of the month. They learn how to allocate. And if you make people responsible financially for their own health with their own health savings account, believe me, they're not going to run off to the emergency room where things cost 5 times as much. They're going to go to a clinic. They get the same treatment in the clinic, but the difference is in the clinic, if they have some chronic disease, hypertension, diabetes, what have you, now you're going to get that under control too, so you're not back there in 3 weeks with another problem. So it begins to make a great deal of difference. Also, with the health savings account, you are going to develop a relationship with that healthcare provider. It's not this big nebulous third party. It's you and the provider. And you're not going to allow that provider to say you need 5 CT scans when you only need 1, nor is he going to suggest that because he knows that's coming directly out of your HSA. And it's going to bring medicine more into the free market because people are now going to be competing. And this is the way it should be.
You know, it's interesting. I have never been able to figure out. Government never put our Social Security money in a lockbox like they said they would. Medicare's headed for bankruptcy. We talked about the debt, $16 trillion. Why do you think so many people put their faith, hope, trust in government to be the answer? And what do you think of Obamacare?
Well, I think that we've been programmed, unfortunately, to become victims and to think that somebody should be taking care of us. We've gone to a can-do nation to a what can you do for me nation. And we start inculcating that into people at an early age. You go to schools now, and they don't want to give the outstanding academic award because everybody's outstanding. And don't want anybody to feel bad. You know, come on, give me a break. But you know, you start all of that stuff.
You can't play dodgeball either, doctor. You know, you can't keep score.
Yeah. So it perpetuates itself throughout their lives. And all of a sudden you wind up with a bunch of people who want to occupy everything because, you know, it's theirs anyway. You didn't deserve that. It should be mine.
Doesn't that go back to a lesson that you say your mother taught you about you control your destiny?
Absolutely.
And these health savings accounts? And you even said people that are poor and indigent,
right,
that there would be a way to help them.
Right, because the government is already spending enormous amounts of money on healthcare dollars on indigent people. Taking not all of that money, only a portion of it, but divvying it up into people's HSAs, over which they now have some control, would make a huge difference. Now, will it be necessary to do some fine-tuning, and will it be necessary to create some encouragements for people who are not indigent to put money into their HSAs, to encourage their employers to put money into their HSAs? Yes, but these are all things that we can work out. What we need to do is get out of the framework of as soon as somebody's saying something, say, no, 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 that can't work, that's why I can't, and say, you know, yeah, that can work, and here's how it can work. And if we begin to put our minds together and understand the concept that we're aiming at, and that is bringing some personal responsibility into the healthcare arena, we can solve that problem. We gotta get over the ideology. If we strain everything through an ideological screen, we will never make any progress.
Let me ask you, how many people in our audience, if I can get an audience shot, think that if the Republicans articulated what Dr. Carson is saying, you're laughing. How many of you think Obamacare maybe wouldn't have passed? Show of hands. Yeah. So there's a failure on the political opposition side of that debate too then.
And I don't know why that is.
I don't know either.
I'm not sure why they're not coming up with the right kinds of answers here.
Well, that dovetails perfectly into our next segment about your potential political future. When we come back, Carson 2016 has a nice ring to it, but are politics in the doctor's future? I'll ask him. Plus, Frank Luntz and his focus group, they dialed Dr. Carson's prayer breakfast remarks, and wait till you see what caused the dials to go through the roof across party lines. All of that and more as our special studio audience edition of Hannity rolls on.